What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Rhett and Evan of the Cannon Fire Podcast, back today with another video about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Today, we're taking a look at some quarterback candidates the Bucs might be in the market for in the 2022 season. Of course, following the news of Tom Brady's retirement, the Buccaneers are looking for a new guy to lead them on offense. And there's quite a few candidates. Before we dive into them, though, Evan's got a pretty big announcement.
Yes, I wanted to announce that I have joined the Bucs Nation, SB Nation's Buccaneers website, as a writer. So I will now be writing articles for them. Don't worry, I'll still be on the podcast. Changes nothing with the podcast. But if you want to check out some of my written work, you can head over to bucsnation.com and go check out some of that cool stuff.
You dropped your first article this week, but the topic was potential quarterback candidates for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2022. So we're going to take a look at some of the guys on that list. Of course, give our takes. And if you guys want to check out the full list of potential quarterbacks for the Bucs next season, bucsnation.com, you can go check it out, written by Evan Wanish. Let's go ahead and dive into the candidates. Evan, I'm going to toss it over to you. I figured we could, of course, get the big names out of the way first and then talk about some more guys as we go.
The name that everybody's going to talk about first, the elephant in the room kind of is going to be Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, there's been a lot of trade speculation about Rodgers. Will he stay? Will he go? Last all season was the same thing. And now with the Packers disappointing into the season, a lot of people are wondering if that's it. A lot of people point to, Tom Brady retired, so just replace him with Aaron Rodgers. And while that sounds all fine and dandy, it's not as easy as it sounds. The Packers aren't going to willingly just give him up, but it's going to take a lot. It's going to take multiple first-round picks, and there's a rumor that he would prefer to play with Davante Adams. So you don't really know how that would factor into the Buccaneers' plans as well. I wouldn't view Rodgers as a likely option just because of not only are you giving up a lot of future assets, you're also having to maybe pay a Davante Adams, close to top wide receiver money, which he's looking for. He's looking for about $30 million a year, which would make him the highest paid receiver in the NFL. So do you want to go down that path? You might have to make sacrifices along the roster that you weren't really expecting to make it if you were. So obviously the Bucs will be interested in Rodgers. I'm sure he's a talented quarterback, and if you want to keep your Super Bowl window open, I'm just not sure how likely he is at this point.
Well, the topic of longevity, I think, also has to be added to that conversation. This is just my personal opinion. Of course, quarterbacks prove guys like me wrong all the time. Tom Brady did it for 22 seasons, but Aaron Rodgers is 38 years old, man. I know that Bruce Arians is also kind of old, and he's committed to coming back for next season, but you don't really know how much longer the Bucs are going to be able to kick this can down the road, in a sense. With a guy like Rodgers, he is incredibly talented. A lot of people consider him one of the most athletic quarterbacks of all time. Can he thrive in Tampa Bay? Absolutely, and I think he would be an awesome option. But again, he's 38 years old, man. Can he continue to play the way that he is now once he hits that milestone of 40 years old, which is, even more of a make or break age for NFL quarterbacks nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons, right? The pro is it's the shortest drop off, I should say, right? From Brady to Rodgers, it's definitely the shortest drop off. And your Super Bowl window is still really wide open. But the cons are, like you said, he's 38. Do you want to maybe have another quarterback for only 2 years, or at most maybe 3 years? Who knows how his body is going to age? So, we're not really sure, honestly. And like I said, that's for the Buccaneers to decide. Like I said, I'm sure they'll be interested, but I'm not sure how likely Rodgers is at this point. One guy who's another big name, a little bit more likely than Rodgers, but I still don't know how likely it actually is Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, there was trade rumors last year, not really that he was going to be traded, but just if it was weird how it was structured. If he were to ask out, he'd want to go to these teams. But, the Buccaneers weren't a team that would have been vying for his services at that point. So maybe now that the Buccaneers are an open spot, maybe he would be interested in coming to Tampa. That's an unknown right now. But Wilson, the Seahawks had a disappointing season. A lot of people think maybe it's time to move on. He's another guy who it wouldn't cost as much to acquire as Aaron Rodgers, but you're still looking at probably 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick, maybe an additional pick. You have to look at what the Rams traded for Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford, I believe, was 32 at the time, and Russell Wilson is now 33. Matthew Stafford was traded for 2 firsts, a 3rd-round pick, and Jared Goff. So, you have to look at that, and I think Russell Wilson's a better quarterback than Matt Stafford, so the cost will likely be a little bit more. Wilson, he's a guy who you can get in this a little bit more, Rhett, but he's a guy who it doesn't seem like he'd be here for 2 years. It seemed like that'd be more of a not really a 10-year thing, but it seemed like that'd be more of a long-term thing. And his fit in the offense would be fascinating because they haven't had a quarterback like that, especially a Bruce Arians offense hasn't really had a quarterback. I don't doubt that Russell Wilson can hit all the throws. It's just the size, the play style. They haven't had a quarterback like that. So it'd be fascinating. I just don't know if the Seahawks are going to trade him. And if they would, I don't know if they would trade him within the conference. So we'll see what happens. But I think Wilson is an intriguing option and possibly like the one that you're like most maybe excited about because it would be so different.
Yeah, and what's the one thing everybody has been saying he needs the most? It's a consistent offensive line. Now, obviously, the Buccaneers have some free agents that they need to shore up, but for the most part, the young talent is there, right? If Alex Kappa goes away, you still got Aaron Stinney. He's a young guy. He played well on that Super Bowl run in 2020. Tristan Wirfs is obviously the future of this team at right tackle. Ryan Jensen, still have yet to see, but I honestly think he ends up re-signing anyways. But not only does he need a structured offensive line, which is exactly what he'll have here in Tampa Bay, but the conversation of longevity comes up. That 2 years potentially with a guy like Aaron Rodgers can definitely turn into 4 to 5 to maybe 6 years with a guy like Russell Wilson. But this is a question for you. What does his play style look like when he is 36, 37 years old? Because he is over 30, but, part of what makes Russ is his athletic ability. And like the longevity of a guy like Tom Brady to Russell Wilson is obviously going to be much different.
It is. It is. And Russell Wilson takes a lot more sacks. He takes a lot more chances. He's running the ball more. So you're going to get hit more. And that's a valid point. He's also not a big guy. He's 5'11. So, that's well documented. So you're right. I mean, he's good now. How's his body going to be in 3 years or so? And that's something that if the Buccaneers are truly interested in acquiring Wilson, they're going to have to determine that. They are going to have to determine that.
I do think his presence in this offense, though, that's the most exciting part of all of it is that, yeah, I think he can do
He can
well and
hit all
make
the
the throws. Yeah, he can hit all the throws, but it almost opens an entirely new
It
chapter
does.
for what they can do. I mean, depending on who you have at running back, it is a disposable position, but it just
Yeah.
opens the door so much more when you have a quarterback who has the ability to do way more than just one thing at a time.
Brady was great, and some say he's a dual threat quarterback at times. But Russell Wilson is a true dual threat quarterback, and that's something that the Bucs haven't had. Like Jameis Winston wasn't that. Josh Freeman wasn't that. Like the Bucs haven't really had that really in their history. So it would be fascinating to see. One of the most not really polarizing, but like I guess debatable topics here is a guy who could be the quarterback for 10 years if he was acquired because he is young enough. But the reason he is on the trade market, well, there's a few reasons, but one of the reasons is something that could lead to him not even playing the entire season. And like, how do the optics look of that? And that's Deshaun Watson. Obviously, Deshaun Watson is a fantastic quarterback. He's still, I believe he's either 26 or 27 years old right now. So if you're acquiring him, he is your quarterback for the future. It's not like a stopgap thing with Rodgers or Wilson. He's your guy for the future, but we're not going to spend too much time on it and his football fit because until his legal issues resolved, I don't think the Bucs or any NFL team for that matter is going to be acquiring him. So until those are resolved, which I don't know. It sure seems like that might take a little bit. Until those are resolved, I just don't really see the point in talking about his fit with his team much. So moving on to I think if the Bucs are going to try and maintain a Super Bowl caliber, team and contender, this may be their best realistic option, and it wouldn't cost as much as even a Russell Wilson. And that's Derek Carr. Now, Derek Carr is a very, very intriguing option. I think he's one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the NFL. He's not great by any means, but I think he is a good quarterback that hasn't really played on a lot of good teams. So I think if he goes to Tampa, it'd be the best team he's played on in his entire career, really. It would be fascinating to see him as well in this offense. I think he's a guy who can hit all the throws. He's been playing in Las Vegas in a John Gruden offense that doesn't really take a ton of chances. So would he take more chances in Tampa Bay? But I think he's shown a willingness to do so. As far as price goes, you're probably looking at a first round pick, but I'm not sure it'd be much more than that, honestly. I don't think it would take much more. I don't think it would be a multiple first situation. I believe Carr's either 30 or 31 years old. So again, he is a guy who could be 4, 5, 6 years. And his play style is even different than Russell Wilson. So he could be a guy who's a little bit more durable than Russ as he gets into his mid to late 30s. So Carr would be an interesting option. The issue is I'm not sure that he's going to be available. There's a new regime in place in Las Vegas with Josh McDaniels, but I just think they might want to try and make that work. They might want to try hard and make Derek Carr the fit and everything, make that work. So we'll see if he becomes available. I think the Bucs will be calling. If any of these guys become available, I think the Bucs will be calling anybody on this list that we mentioned before that we're going to mention here soon. But I'm just not sold that he's going to be available. But if he were to be made available, that would be definitely one of the Bucs' best options.
Yeah, Derek Carr is probably the guy at the top of the list of things I think will happen. If he's not number one, definitely number two. But just like you brought up, that Josh McDaniels hire, man, I really think that changes things in Vegas. I tend to agree with most of your sentiments. I think the Bucs would definitely be more than interested in giving him a look, but you just got to see what happens with McDaniels because false promises have been made, right? Like how many times in the NFL have we seen a new head coach come in say that, hey, this guy's my guy. And then a couple months later, that's just simply not the case. So we'll see how it shakes out. But Carr, an interesting guy to keep an eye on.
And then the last trade candidate that we will discuss here, there's a few more in the article. So go ahead and go to bucksnation.com, read the article. But the last trade candidate we will talk about here is one that might be the most polarizing one, honestly. And that's Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo, for obvious reasons, would finally succeed Tom Brady, right? Not in New England, but in Tampa Bay. Who would have guessed that?
Does that mean all the transplant fans would probably stick around for a few more years?
Maybe you'd have a little bit more. Maybe you have a few stick around, sure. Yeah. Maybe some 49ers fans, who knows? Oh. But I mean, look, Garoppolo, he is what he is. I don't think he's bad. I just think he's very average. But there are some reasons why the Bucs, you'd ask, I don't even think he's a great fit in the offense. But you ask, well, why would the Bucs really get him then if he's average and he's not a great fit in the offense? Well, he wouldn't cost a first round pick. He might not even cost a second round pick. So you're talking about a guy who would be cheap to acquire, maybe a third at most, maybe, possibly a fourth, fifth round pick, maybe. He wouldn't cost a ton to acquire. And I think there's still, in the league, I believe that a lot of the league believes that there is some untapped potential there with Jimmy G. So he's an option. Is he the best one? No, he's probably not, but he's a realistic option. And I think, Bucs fans need to prepare for, the possibility that he could be the quarterback. Like I said, is it ideal? No, but I just think there's some things that are working in his favor. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but he's definitely an option that you have to consider. And I think you got to keep an eye on.
Jimmy G's a guy that has already said his goodbyes to San Fran. In his press conference, he's like, listen, it's been fun. All the comebacks. Love you guys. 49ers faithful, yada, yada. All of that good stuff, right? But he also said that he'd love to end up playing for a contender. He'd love to be in a situation where he can win. And 99% of NFL players would love that, I'm sure. But that makes Tampa a more than desirable place for him to end up. And just like you said, depending on how Bruce Arians and his coaching staff look at this team and how they want to build it now, Jimmy G could be a guy who comes in here and just kind of steers the ship on offense, right? Doesn't really have to take over games. It wasn't exactly what he was known for. When he had to do it 9 times out of 10, they were losing that game. And that's also going to factor in when you talk about how much longer you want to compete for Super Bowls. But it almost seems like a waste, all of those weapons, when you got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and a quarterback who can barely get it to them. But winning games is what's important at the end of the day. Not every wide receiver on the roster getting 1,000+ yards. So it could be an option. I do not think it should be an option. I am not in the Jimmy G camp whatsoever. But it definitely does make sense for the people who may want it to happen, or a lot of the people who think it will happen.
Yeah, it does for a number of reasons. And we're going to get to one free agent, one unrestricted free agent. There's a few others in the article. Like I said, go check it out. But we're going to get to a guy who the Bucs were reportedly interested in when they decided on Tom Brady. And that is another TB. That is Teddy Bridgewater. Bridgewater, he had a lot more shine in that offseason than he did, right? He was just coming off of, he was a New Orleans Saint. He was 5-0 as a starter when Drew Brees went down. And then Bridgewater goes to Carolina. And Carolina has no answer for quarterback, yet they replace him again. Then he goes to Denver. And Denver has no answer for quarterback, yet he gets replaced. So now, again, he's not going to be back in Denver. So I just think with Teddy, it's a safe option. But like your ceiling is very, very low. Like your ceiling is not very high at all. I just think he's not going to throw any interceptions, but he's also not going to throw a lot of touchdowns. And I just don't see. I think the shine that he had in that 2020 offseason, it's kind of worn off now. And I'm not sure. I don't have a source on this or anything, but I'm not sure if the Bucs would have the same level of interest now that they did back then. But Bridgewater's a veteran. You know what you're getting with him. That's why I said he's safe. Is he a better option than giving up an asset for Jimmy Garoppolo? Maybe, but it's tough. It really is. So, just like you said about Jimmy, you're kind of wasting Mike Evans and most likely Chris Godwin if when he comes back. So, it would be tough to sign Bridgewater. I think it'd be a tough sell, but I could see it. I think he's an option. The free agency class, folks, is not good. All right. So be prepared. Teddy Bridgewater is among the top. He's probably a top 2 or 3 free agent quarterback right now. And that should tell you all you need to know about this class. So I think Bridgewater could be an option, but he may not be an ideal one either. But the big thing is the Bucs don't have to give up any draft picks for him. It's just money. So that could really sway into Bridgewater's favor. But like I said, we got a few other names over there on Bucs Nation. Go check it out. Rhett, what are your thoughts on Bridgewater?
I'm a big Teddy B fan. I always have been. I mean, that injury in Minnesota that set him back, a lot of people thought that was the end of his career. I thought his story coming back into the NFL and then obviously ending up on the Saints, being 5-0 as a starter, as much as I hate the Saints, it's still hard to root against Teddy Bridgewater. But when he's been given the keys to an offense, like he was in Carolina, like he was in Denver, he has lost teams games. And that's, just like you had brought up, when you bring in a guy like Teddy B, when you know what he is now in the NFL in the grand scheme of what he's done in his career, you are kind of leaving games on the table because there's not going to be games where Teddy B can lead your offense on a 2-minute drive and throw a touchdown to Surreal Grayson with 28 seconds left for the go-ahead touchdown. It's probably not going to happen that way. I don't think he's going to be capable of making those throws in an Arians offense, just like a lot of the same points I made about Garoppolo. Can you scheme him to win? Absolutely. I think that's why he was 5-0 as a starter under Sean Payton, right? But I just don't think Bruce Arians is going to be able to do that. And as far as Teddy B, I think his abilities in this offense would be limited. Any quarterback can do a lot of good things when you're throwing to the weapons the Bucs have, but you have to make those throws at the end of the day. I wanted to get your opinion as we kind of wrap things up here. There's one more group of players that we have yet to talk about, and I only bring this up because Jason Light made some comments this week reasserting his faith in second-round quarterback Kyle Trask. What are your thoughts on the Trask and Gabbert duo? Because it almost seems like you have to build these guys together, considering if you start Trask for a couple of games next season, you're probably going to have to start Blaine Gabbert at some point in the season. So, what are your thoughts on the Buccaneers feeling comfortable enough with what they have to stick with Kyle Trask and see what he can do with this offense?
Well, I think in an ideal world, if Trask starts the year, he finishes it, because if he's getting replaced by Blaine Gabbert, that means that Kyle Trask is not good. That's what that means. If Blaine Gabbert starts the year, then Kyle Trask comes in. That's one thing. But Blaine Gabbert, I want to talk about more, because I would be surprised if with this roster, as talented as it is, with Mike Evans just sort of, kind of towards the end of his prime. He's still in his prime, but he's getting close to the end, right? He's getting closer to 30 years old. Levante David isn't getting any younger. Shaq Barrett even isn't getting any younger. I just don't know if they're going to feel comfortable giving the reins to a second-year quarterback who wasn't even a first-round pick, was essentially a third-round pick because he was the last pick of the second round. So they can like Trask development all they want. I think they understood that like Trask wouldn't be ready in 1 year, and that's why I really don't see him being the starter. Blaine Gabbert's a real possibility, but yet again, I've always said, and I said on the show a little bit, but not too much. Everybody talks about, oh, Bruce Arians loves Gabbert. He loves Gabbert. Gabbert will be the starter. If Bruce Arians loved Blaine Gabbert so much, then why wasn't Blaine Gabbert considered, as a top guy to replace Jameis Winston when they did? Why did they go out and show interest in Tom Brady, show interest in Teddy Bridgewater, show interest in Phillip Rivers? Why did they do that then? So I always think the Blaine Gabbert praise was mostly just talking up your own player. But yet again, you can win some games. I just think your ceiling is incredibly low. I think your ceiling is probably 8 or 9 wins. And maybe that does win you the NFC South, but you just trying to win the division and get in the playoffs, or are you trying to win the Super Bowl? So, I would be surprised if Trask started, but Gabbert's a possibility. I just don't know. I'll believe it when I see it. If Blaine Gabbert trots out there week 1 as the Bucs starter, I'll be like, okay. But then until that happens, I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna be a little bit skeptical about Gabbert being the starter.
I definitely agree. And a few more reasons to add on to your point. Bruce Arians also is going to have a say-so in this. And in my personal opinion, I don't think Bruce Arians wants to sit around for 2 or 3 more seasons with a team that's ready to win and take a chance on a quarterback that may or may not win you games. All right. It's obviously not an ideal situation to be in when you're working with as raw of a quarterback as that. But especially with the team being what it is now, I know a lot of people in the comments are probably going to be referring to free agents, some pending free agents. And yes, the Bucs are going to have some guys leaving. We're actually going to put out a video on this later on this week, but this Bucs team is going to be fine. They're still going to be built to win after the offseason. Even if they lose 60% of the names on that list, I still feel like Jason Light's going to be able to get the job done, put the Band-Aids on this team, and have them in a well enough place week 1 next season to where they are ready to compete, because I still think the nucleus is there. You still obviously got your young guys. You got to get younger in some positions, so that means some guys are going to leave. But yeah, I tend to agree with everything you just said.
You can get to the playoffs with most of the guys we listed. You this roster, you can probably get to the playoffs with most of the guys. But can you get to a Super Bowl? Probably not. Right? Probably not with some of those guys. A few of them, sure. A few that we listed, you definitely can. But some of them you can't. So it all depends on how aggressive they want to be. I think they'll be aggressive, but I also think there's going to be limitations. If Russell Wilson never becomes available, if he says, oh, I don't want out of Seattle, and Seattle says, well, we're not trading him, there's nothing the Bucs can do, right? If Derek Carr says, oh, I don't want out of Vegas, and the Raiders say, we're not trading him, there's nothing you can do. So, I think they'll be aggressive, but also there's going to be some limitations. There is a lot of options, but limitations. So, like I said, I listed a few more guys, trade candidates and free agent candidates on the article at bucksnation.com. Like I said, go check it out. And it'll be a very interesting offseason. Don't worry, we'll have time to talk about each one of these guys pretty much individually for a longer time on a podcast in the future. So it won't be the last time you're hearing us mention these names.
Thank you guys for checking out this video. Subscribe to the channel for more great Buccaneers content. Of course, the podcast a few times a week as well. Make sure to like the video and leave us a comment. Who do you think will be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback in 2022? We'll catch you in the next one. Until then, and as always, go Bucs.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers from the 48-yard line. 2nd down, 13. Brady lobs one downfield. Caught ball by Gronkowski.